living under a democracy, sometimes decisions are best left to the hands of people who understand the complexity of certain issues and who can be trusted to make policy decisions in an objective manner. The problem with politicians is that we are held at the behest of populism, which forces us to ignore the objective benefits of many economic policies. This will no longer be the case when we allow technocrats to determine the economic policies of the state. We, the government side, propose a policy where a panel of high-achieving, well-established economic experts will make decisions on the economic policy of the state. Firstly, we need to establish an independent, bipartisan committee that appoints these economic experts solely based on merits and experience. Secondly, we will ensure that these economic experts are highly reserved in their respective industries and are peer-reviewed to determine that their qualifications and policies are not tainted by their political views. Thirdly, these experts will form a panel of technocrats who will decide on economic policies, and politicians will not have an ability to veto these policies. However, politicians and members of society can similarly raise concerns for them to consider, directly engage with them, and hold them accountable for any failed economic policies. Directly moving on to my arguments. Firstly, why politicians pass poor economic policies in order to satisfy popular sentiments. When society carries prejudicial sentiments, oftentimes politicians are forced to reflect that in policymaking in order to not lose popularity among voters. Although those sentiments such as sexism, racism, or xenophobia will have some bearing on the making of social policies, they have absolutely no place when it comes to making economic policies. Under the status quo, xenophobic voters will force their political representatives to limit the number of jobs for immigrants, when in fact most economies require the labor force of immigrants to fill the gap in the market force. Some nations lack skilled workers while others lack unskilled workers. If we do not use immigrants, the shortage of workers will dramatically increase the wages of those workers so that businesses can attract people to work for them. The increase in cost will be passed down to consumers and result in more expensive goods and services. The reduction in purchasing power results in less economic activity, which is extremely harmful for the nation's economy. Yet voters do not consider any of these far-reaching economic consequences, but will instead focus on their fear of jobs being stolen by immigrants. So we think that this allows certain political parties to capitalize the emotion of the people and undermine broader economic objectives. They use fear, hatred, and prejudice in campaigning, which results in a large number of voters prioritizing their personal feelings over objective policy outcomes. And we need to stop asking the people to decide complex issues such as economic policies based on their emotional preference. But moving on to my second argument of why technocrats will objectively pass better economic policies than the politicians. We have two layers of analysis. Firstly, the people do not have any self-initiative to be fully informed and fully educated in the matter of economic policies. It requires a great amount of research and then a certain level of intellectual understanding to be able to choose and formulate the best economic policies for the nation. Many people often make their decisions based on very little information or worse, based on misinformation fed to them by powerful corporations through the media. In contrast, it is the job of technocrats to firmly use extensively test expert knowledge when making these policies. This will categorically ensure superior economic policies. But second of all, the greatest priority for technocrats is to do their job right and make accurate assessments on the state of our national economy. Their performance as technocrats will be directly measured by the efficiency of their policies. This ensures that the policies made will all be the highest quality possible. In comparison, the success of politicians is measured by their approval rating. So their largest priority is to do what the people want, and time again, the people have proven themselves to be incapable of making the right economic choices for the nation because they are oftentimes selfish and oftentimes uninformed. But this is because people are that only advance their individuals and community interests. But economic policies need to be broadly benefit to every individual and community interest, a single community in the nation in order to get the best economic outcome. Technocrats will be more likely to counter the economic interests of most people in the nation. So for these reasons, I'm very proud to propose. Thank you.
Members of this House, side opposition firmly believes in two things. First of all, not only democratically elected representatives of the people should be given the power to form policies on our behalf. If the status quo is imperfect, Mr. Madam Speaker, we are perfectly happy to strengthen the check and balance mechanism within policymaking. Secondly, we believe that economic experts and technocrats do play a role in policymaking, which is to advise policymakers and strengthen the implementation of methods of policies. Politicians already have to consult the experts in the process of crafting policies, and we believe that they will do so under the status quo too. So before moving on to anything else, allow me to rebut a point that the Prime Minister has raised. So the Prime Minister has said how the politicians will make these bad economic policies. However, we believe we have two responses to this. First of all, we deny the characterization of the team government. We believe that people are not stupid, Mr. Madam Speaker. People understand the right and wrong economic policies. If the government characterizations are right, then our economy should be really bad. But we believe that this is not the case in the status quo. And second of all, the reason why people can choose the right economic policy is that there are many checks and balances. The media will discuss about the economic policy, and the expertise will discuss about the economic policy, and the politicians themselves discuss about the economic policy too. We believe that, therefore, with these checks and balances, people can make right choices. So allow me to move on to our team's first argument about how these economic policies must be premised on the interest of people and not just objective economic outcomes. So not a single economic policy in the nation purely concerns economic outcomes, Mr. Madam Speaker. In most cases, economic policies determine the amount of rights and welfare given to the people. Increasing the minimum wage is not done in order to improve the economy. It is done because people should be given enough money to afford the minimum cost of living if they are working in a full-time job. So, Mr. Madam Speaker, we believe that if technocrats are asked to form policies based on expert economic knowledge, we are clearly asking them to make policies with clear disregard to social rights. This will create a platform for structural discrimination and a violation of the state obligation to protect these people. The problem with using pure economic outcomes to assess the merits of an economic policy is that it will create an agreement with an agricultural nation, and they might increase our overall nation income, but it will discriminate the economic rights of our local farmers. If they will put out of the business, they will be put out of business, and they will be stripped of the right to self-preservation, Mr. Madam Speaker. And when crafting any economic policies, the government has a role to balance and to protect the diverse interests for all communities. This will clearly not be the case for technocrats, who simply need to prove an overall net benefit to the economy. And our team's second argument is about how technocrats have little to no accountability to the people they are impacting. So society put these politicians in power, and thus they are required to justify the decisions to the people. And this prevents politicians from passing through poorly formed or abusive policies. With technocrats, no such accountability will exist, Mr. Madam Speaker. The entire policy discussion can be made without transparency and remain confidential only amongst these experts. They are not required to answer the demands of the people and justify the policy to the society beyond what is required to them. But most importantly, we believe that technocrats will not be liable in any way if they pass poor economic policies. The problem with economic policies is that no amount of expert knowledge can prevent disastrous economic situations that are caused by market crashes, international conflicts, and whatnot. Sometimes what may seem like a sound economic policy, such as the Eurozone, becomes disastrous when countries like Greece depreciate the common euro currency to the point where it threatens your entire economy. When this happens, we believe that the politicians are pressured to urgently address these situations, or in the worst case scenario, take responsibility for their mistakes. Politicians are forced to answer difficult questions and formulate contingency plans, or even resign to make way for better future plans. We cannot hold the same level of accountability for technocrats, and for all these reasons, we are very proud to oppose.
Madam and Mr. Speaker, so let me directly move into my rebuttals. So they came up to the podium and talked about how the technocrats do not care about the
the rights of citizens when they make the economic policies. However, first of all, we think that in the long-term benefit, we can have sustainable development of the country is the best form of welfare that people can have. And secondly, we reject the characterization made by the team opposition because social economists also emphasize the minimum quality of the life and decrease the gap between the rich and poor. So look at examples of Thomas Piketty and Paul Krugman. They're all advocates of the social goods. So they also talked about how technocrats will not determine the welfare that people get. However, firstly, technocrats can make policies that are going to benefit the country in the long term, which will benefit the citizens in the long term. And secondly, it is an assumption that technocrats are cold-hearted and only think about the money of the country. What we are actually talking about is that citizens will not think about welfare and short-term benefits, while technocrats are only going to think of balance between development and welfare. So moving into our team's last area, which is about why checks and balances to policy making will improve in technocrats. The most important aspect of check and balance is accountability. This is the thing that deters politicians from abusing their political powers, and accountability forces politicians to be answerable to their bad decisions and resign in the light of grave violations of public interest. In the status quo, the only way we can get politicians to be accountable is when the public exerts political pressure on the politicians by creating a public relations disaster for those candidates or parties. Losing popularity is a death sentence for politicians, as they can only gain political office from popularity. So politicians, they understand that making poor policies that creates immense social backlash could be an end to their political career. There's two ways in which this accountability mechanism I just described will structurally fail, and in contrast will not fail when it comes to technocrats. So firstly, we think that politicians can diminish their accountability to answer for bad policy decisions by reverting public attention to other things within their portfolio. This is possible because politicians are responsible for passing countless policy across many different issues. Thus, they're able to divert attention from their failures by focusing on their successes, and even if they have made a significant economic blunder, they can reorient public focus on national security, healthcare, education, or any other aspect of governance where they can make, when they have made policy improvements on. And therefore, this removes the public pressure placed onto these politicians to answer for their mistakes, and this will make it easier for the public and the government to force technocrats to take responsibility for their decisions and be held accountable. So secondly, whether or not we vote a certain politician into office will be a multifaceted decision that considers many issues across the board. And even if a politician was responsible for wrecking the economy, we think that he or she might still be voted into office if they're the token candidate for a women's rights, civil rights, environmental rights, or any other multitude of issues that may resonate amongst the voters. The problem is that every voter places different importance on different issues, and this will dilute the amount of responsibility we force them to take for their economic decisions. Issues that are based on a voter's identity will be far more likely to take precedence in the voter's mind. Therefore, as a woman who is primarily invested in women's rights issues, she will still vote for a Democrat with a public budget that will place the U.S. in a severe economic deficit, rather than vote for a Republican who, with a healthy economic budget, but discriminates women's rights. This creates a national setback on the creation of sound economic policies when other voters' issues are dragged into consideration. With technocrats, the sole consideration is the quality of economic policies, and thus it will result in a greater likelihood that sound economic policies will pass. Therefore, I'm very proud to propose. Thank you.
So the power to set policies for the rest of the society is the single most important right and power that we can give to anyone. Whatever they set will determine the amount of rights and opportunities that the rest of us can access. And to give a group of people who have no will to represent what the society wants and have no need to be accountable for the society, for the policy decisions, will be the biggest political disaster made in the modern history. This power to make policy must always remain with the politicians and not technocrats. And I'd like to now move directly on to our rebuttals. And I'd like to rebut to the point about how the government team said about how these technocrats can make better economic policies because they're expertise and sometimes people make bad economic decisions. However, what is a right economic policy? We believe that the number cannot define good or bad economic policy. And furthermore, we think that even economic policy should concern the well-being of these citizens. And why do we implement social welfare policy? We implement social welfare not because of the overall economy of the country, but because we want to guarantee the minimum quality of life of the citizens. Technocrat is not the right person who can think about the well-being of these citizens. And we also believe that the government committee is very ineffective today. That economists have very different perspective when it comes to economic policy. Think about it. There's also an example, Paul Krugman and they have very different economic policies. And how are we going to ensure that they're going to come up with an agreed economic policy? And more than that, you have to prove to us why only economic policy. What makes economic policy so special? People might not understand that education or international relations. And furthermore, the government team's third argument was basically about how checks and balances will fail with politicians. So nevertheless, there is a political party that prevents its candidates from proposing very unreasonable ideas and policies. And because of the, if we have an example, because of a candidate called Trump, the whole Republican Party is being criticized in the status quo. And the citizens there also act as a measure of checks and balances because there are people who agree and also disagree with every policy. And having done this, I'd like to now move on to our third argument, which is about how this will impede discourse and create worse policies. So the people have no qualms about engaging with politicians on policy matters. They understand that we are the ones who put them into power, and they have a duty to engage with us on every level. The politicians know that they have to use terms that people understand and enable them to participate in discourse with them, and it is their duty to convince the people that their policy is the best policy among the other policies. And on the other hand, technocrats are very smart people who are employed for the purpose of being smart. They will feel no such obligation to dumb down their knowledge or policy implementation in order for it to be understood by the citizens. We believe that society will feel that there is an intellectual barrier in this political discourse, and the ordinary citizens will not feel like they're qualified to give a policy critic to the technocrats and to actually express their opinions about the policy. And in the same way that we are unforgiving with the policy flaws of the politicians, they will feel as if they need to go through comprehensive research and go through intensive self-learning before they're able to contend with these economic policies. The average voter will not go through such a rigorous method before engaging in a discourse, and thus will be disincentivized from engaging at all. We believe that this is completely going to shut down the discourse and create a policy platform that is devoid of all these counter-narratives and social opinions. And we believe that the citizen opinions matters because at the end of the day, these laws are going to give a direct impact to the citizens, and the citizens' ideas should be actually incorporated to actually make an effective law. And effective policies must always have wide engagement from diverse stakeholders, in absence of which these economic policies will be unrepresentative and inevitably inclusive discussion on most important stakeholders. And for these reasons, we're very proud to oppose.
Are capable in making social-centric policies. However, we believe that they are not able to prove this because under these circumstances that politicians would make policies for individuals, not for the society, because they consider the fact that being popular and having many votes are very crucial when being a politician. However, because citizens are thinking of selfish and citizens are thinking about themselves, we believe that politicians will make policies for individuals. So we believe that there are two main questions in this debate. First of all, which side implements a better definition about the economic policies, and secondly about the accountability of about the politicians and the technocrats. On to our first question about the definition of economic policies. They told us about the social interests of people, right? Or we believe that the goal of citizens when making policies is to have a better society. When they actually vote for politicians, they vote the politicians to make a more better quality of life and a more better society. And we believe that if we prove that technocrats are able to make good policies, we fulfill the goal of what the citizens want. Because technocrats have statistics and because technocrats are experts, we believe that technocrats are able to make more better policies and fulfill the goal of the citizens. And second, we believe that when the society gets better by technocrats, we believe that welfare or basic rights are fulfilled automatically. For example, when we look at the case of the US, when the United States have more development, there are more better welfares and there are more better infrastructures, which we believe that when the society gets more better, we believe that there will be welfare and basic rights for the citizens. And we believe that when there's a lot of welfare, we believe that there are more developments. Therefore, the technocrats would give more good welfare. We believe that technocrats think about the development of the country, right? Or we believe that, such as workers who want to, when the workers actually want welfare, when the workers want welfare, these workers would need it when working. However, to actually maximize the profit of working, the technocrats would actually consider the fact about the welfare. And secondly, we believe that economists cares about reputation, like we said about the peer reviews. Because they care about the reputation, we believe that they will care about balancing out what is more important between the development and the welfare. Because when one is much more cared of between the other one, we believe that they will be criticized. And lastly, even if politicians might seem they represent people well, they are using these people to get re-elected. And they also told us about there are less communications and engagement because economic policies have a lot because technocrats. They told us about the less communication and engagements between technocrats and citizens. Or we that citizens would try to engage with the technocrats because economic policies have a lot of effects to them. We believe that when actually a technocrat makes a policy, we believe that because there are a lot of effects, we believe that the citizens will consider that. No, thank you. So we don't want this first clash about the definition of the economic policies because of the economic policies, the impact is so big. We the technologists of technocrats with statistics are a better actor in solving the problem. On to our second question about the accountability. They told us about technocrats have no accountability. However, like I already clarified, we that there are natural check and balances where technocrats think about reputation and there are reviews of peers. We believe that that's the reason why technocrats will make a more better policy than politicians because they have statistics and they are natural check and balances of stopping technocrats doing something that they want. And secondly, we believe that there are less problems because they make policies based on statistics, and we believe that this is important because it is too late to fix the problems when politicians actually make the mistakes of economic policies because the economic policies impact is so big. So we believe that when politicians make mistakes, it will be bad for the economy and it will be irreversible. So we believe that on the second question about the accountability, because we believe that politicians, even if politicians have more accountabilities, we believe that they make more bad policies, which will be harmful for the society. So for these reasons, we are not opposed.
Ladies and gentlemen, most honorable adjudicator, to jump right into my clashes, I would like to firstly present what economic policy is better. Secondly, about the role of government or role of a democratic society, and lastly about the accountability. And firstly, they said that, like, before I move on, they said that we need to prove why politicians are so capable. However, we believe that politicians who show their face in public, and if like a policy that a politician made wrecked your life, would you rather care about that, or like would you rather care about like some minorities' rights that like didn't really engage with your actual life? We believe that these people would actually be deterred from actually voting on like a certain political party when this political party actually like wrecked their life and they know who did it, compared to when this choice is actually anonymous and they do not know who did it and they just need to suffer in this vicious cycle of not being able to voice their opinions and these opinions never actually reaching these like technocrats. Instead, we proposed a solution of technocrats supporting these sort of politicians, and we believe that this is better, as we have already mentioned the example of like Paul Krugman and how Piketty actually have very different economic policies, and we don't actually expect them to agree on a certain economic policy. We actually expect people to vote on a certain person's opinion that is better in economic society, which is why they should actually like just support these sort of political leaders, not actually be engaged in the sort of choices that these citizens are supposed to make. And firstly moving on to talk about like which economic policy is better. Firstly, I would like to point out that we are a democratic nation. In every policy, there are people who oppose and people who agree. We are not like in a brainwashed society where people only care about like one other policy and they never care about like the other sort of detrimental effects that this will cause. We believe that side government is rather just ignoring these people and like just calling these people dumb. We believe that this, like in different social classes, there are people who suffer, and technocrats can't predict the future either. We believe that it's rather better for these people to actually know why they're suffering and know that they're suffering because of their choice, not because of a group of people that are made to like maximize a benefit that they cannot reach reach the benefit of. And secondly, moving on to my second clash about about like the role of government and democracy. Firstly, and adding on to the points that we have made previously in our first clash about the choice of these people. In a democratic nation, people have to be first of all aware and have chosen the policy. So the impact is a compensation of the citizens' choice, not of some anonymous people who just suddenly decided that these digits made sure that like it would benefit the majority. We believe that it is rather better to have the citizens choose than them compensate, which is actually impossible, as I previously mentioned, and our previous speaker has also mentioned. Why should the citizens, even like minorities, suffer from anonymous choice? We believe that their sort of like logic is very flawed, and we believe that it's just why we have won this second clash. And lastly, moving on to our final clash about accountability, they said that these people would only care about popularity, and they have like no reason to care about these other people. However, like firstly, we believe that actually there are more checks and balance mechanisms in our case than their case of like people not knowing like who is of these people only like caring about the opinions of technocrats around them, which is actually like a minority group and not a majority that like votes on these sort of policies. And like first, we gave an example of like Donald Trump and the Republican Party criticizing them and trying to discredit them because their party will be deterred from choosing in the next election because of Donald Trump's words and because of his because how he was like discriminating other races. And we believe that citizens are also a check and balance mechanism, as we have mentioned, and the effect is so detrimental that it will wreck their life. As I said before, they will care about that more than like different policies. And thank you for these reasons, ladies and gentlemen. I'm proud to oppose.
Ladies and gentlemen, we do agree with the point that technocrats will, of course, make better policies, since they are basically educated to do this. But what we don't agree is on that fact that we are living in a democratic nation. And we have clearly stated how technocrats will, at the end of the day, make policies that does not really represent what the citizens think, and will make economic policies that simply just focuses on the outcome and not the process of achieving this outcome. These technocrats will also make such complicated and difficult policies. Today we are living in a democratic
There was no engagement about this point from the government team at all when it came out in the second speaker. Also, there was no engagement on the argument on our point about how technocrats already play a role in policy making, and therefore these politicians will not just not make these stupid policies, but rather politicians, different from technocrats, politicians are pressured to make policies that benefits all citizens, or at least balances out these benefits and harms. Now, the government's only rebuttal to this point was how citizens will be selfish and the outcome will suddenly be this bad policy, but the politicians are pressured by the media, these experts, and citizens to point out all the harms, benefits, and all the sides of these policies they make. So we do not believe that these politicians will actually make these stupid policies who harm everyone, and that technocrats will suddenly be so better than these politicians. And thus, now we're proud to oppose.
이게 분명히 찍을 때는 되게 많다는데 갑자기 동영상 보니까 없어진 거를 머리에 불러주니까 깜짝 놀랐었지.
그럼 이건 꺼지지 않아?
지금 다시 원위치 아직 한도 맞았어.
So, Mr. Madam Speaker, we believe that in this debate, it was a comparative debate, so we think it was the both sides' burden to prove why their policy is better than the other policy. So let me prove why technocrats are better than politicians in the main points I found throughout this whole debate. So the first, the characteristic of technocrats and politicians. The opposition said that they will not give human rights and things like that. However, throughout this whole debate, we think that the opposition had an unfair, wrong assumption, and because they think that all technocrats are cruel and cold-hearted. However, through a natural check and balance, the people who do not really make a good policy will be will stop them from working in the next term. So, and we think that we will have only technocrats who actually work for the whole. So we think that the government could prove why technocrats can make long-term policies which is beneficial, and the opposition that they under the wrong assumption. We think they will make only policies for the individual. So considering both politicians and technocrats characteristics, we think that the policies will be better made because they are long-term policies, because our goal is to make the benefits for the whole society. Secondly, about accountability. So the opposition said that technocrats will not be accountable and politicians will be accountable. However, here the opposition has needed to look and related to the citizens judging. So because the technocrats make one minor mistake, this is negatively changing the whole society. So do you actually think that the citizens and the rest of the government is going to accept this? So the government could prove why technocrats will take the responsibility if they make mistakes. So there's still accountability. And for the opposition, yes, politicians are accountable. However, again, how they make policies are more important, because considering that there will always be natural check and balances, considering that they will still have accountability, we think that there will be more benefits and more benefits, not just prevent the harm. So, and they also talked about that citizens to choose. However, and they talked about citizens' right, but we think that a more important issue than that is the government's role in order to prevent such harms from happening, because economic policies have a big impact. And lastly, we think that the government opposition had talked about too many material. It was very irresponsible and unfair for me, and unfair for the government team to rebut to that and whatnot. So that is the reason why we think that technocrats can better make economic policies than politicians, and the government that takes this debate home. Thank you.